Hello, everyone, and welcome to Backer Breaks It Down. In this episode, we're going to solve some trigonometric equations, finding solutions in radians. Okay, so we're going to focus on non-quadratic trig equations in this video. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to isolate the trig function on one side of the equation. So basically, your first goal is to get like sine of your angle equals 1. Or like cosine is equal to the square root of 2 over 2. But you want to isolate your trig function, okay? When we solve for the variable, we want to ask ourselves, where are the solutions? Like what quadrants? Or do we have some quadrantal angles? Remember, quadrantal angles always happen with like whenever you've got positive and -1 or 0, that's how you know that you have a quadrantal angle situation. Okay, now if it's not one of those quadrantal angles, you are going to draw a reference triangle to determine the reference angle. Or even better, just refer to one of these diagrams. So the way that these reference angles worked is opposite the angle, you have like certain values. So opposite the 30-degree angle is 1, and then the adjacent side is the square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is always 2. Opposite the 45-degree angle is the square root of 2, the adjacent side is the square root of 2, and the hypotenuse is always 2. Opposite the 60-degree angle is the square root of 3, the adjacent side is 1, and the hypotenuse is always 2. So this reference angle and the quadrants that you mentioned before are going to help you to then find the solutions in the proper quadrants. Okay, so let's take a look at some really easy examples. Like sine of x is 1/2. Isolate the trig function, that part is already done. See how sine is isolated? The next question you ask yourself are, where are the solutions? Well, sine is positive 1/2, and sine is positive in quadrant 2, and well, all of them are positive in quadrant 1. So that's where our solutions are, quadrants 1 and quadrant 2. Okay, so I know I'm going to be looking in quadrant 1. I know I'm going to be looking in quadrant 2. So then I need to draw my reference triangle. Now, I can keep it simple and keep it a quadrant 1 triangle. Okay, so here in quadrant 1, I know that sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Look for that reference angle. What is on the other side of that one? Well, looky here. 30 degrees is on the other side of that one. And we said that our answer angles are in quadrants 1, where it's pi over 6, and quadrant 2, where it's 5 pi over 6. And those are your two solutions, pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. So once your trig function is isolated, next simply ask yourself, where are the solutions? Here we have cosine is negative square root of 2 over 2. Well, where is cosine negative? Cosine is negative here in quadrant 2. Cosine is negative in quadrant 3. So that's where our two solutions are going to be located. Next, we need a visual. We can keep it simple, keep it to quadrant 1. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So what reference angle goes with this? That's right, we're looking at a 45-degree reference angle. The triangle drawn looks very similar to the triangle in our diagram. Our answers are in quadrants 2 and 3. So 3 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4 are our answer angles. So in these two problems here, I didn't have to isolate the trig function, but majority of the time I have to. And so the examples you have in your notes do just that. So notice that we have sine on both sides of the equation. So like if you think there's just too much going on here. I don't blame you. There's a lot going on here. So what you can do to help you isolate is pretend this is simply 3x minus 2 and 5x minus 1. Okay, we're pretending here so that we can isolate. So then I want to get the x's onto one side. So I would subtract the 3x from both sides, giving me 2x. And I'd want to add 1 to both sides, giving me negative 1. And then to get x by itself, I would divide both sides by 2. So I got x all by itself. X is negative 1/2. But did I get x all by itself, or did I just get sine of x all by itself? I just got sine of x all by itself. I ignored the sine for a little bit. It has to come back though. But I ignored it so I could isolate the trig function. Get x all by itself, you get the trig function all by itself. Next, where are the solutions? Well, notice that sine is negative 1/2. So where is sine negative? Sine is negative in quadrant 3 and in quadrant 4. So that's where the solutions are, quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Next up, what is the reference angle? So we're keeping it simple. We'll keep it to quadrant 1. They're telling us that sine is negative 1/2. All right, and we know that sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So the opposite is 1, the hypotenuse is 2. And so we're looking for what that angle is. Okay, and so I'm seeing it right here. It's a 30-degree reference angle. And finally, what are the solutions? Remember, we said our solutions were in quadrant 3 and in quadrant 4. Well, in quadrant 3, the answer angle is 7 pi over 6. And in quadrant 4, the answer angle is 11 pi over 6. So those are my two solutions. So isolate the trig function. Once you've done that, where are the solutions? That's plural because there's 2 of them. Next up, what is the reference angle? Keep it simple. Keep it to quadrant 1 to help you with this. And then finally, what are the solutions? Use your diagrams. So let's take a look at one more. 5 cosine x equals 3 cosine x plus the square root of 2. Keep it simple. We're isolating the trig function. For the time being, we can pretend that cosine x is simply x. So we have 5x. And that 3 cosine x is simply 3x. And then the square root of 2, unfortunately, is still the square root of 2. So isolate x. Subtract 3x from both sides. You get that 2x is equal to the square root of 2. And then divide by 2 to get x all by itself. And then realize what you really just did was you isolated cosine of x. And cosine of x is equal to the square root of 2 over 2. Where are the solutions? Well, cosine is positive, and all of our functions are positive in quadrant 1, and then cosine is also positive in quadrant 4. So our solutions are in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4. What is the reference angle? Keep it simple. Keep it to quadrant 1. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So our reference angle, if you look at your 3 triangles, your reference angle is the 45-degree reference angle. And we said our answers are in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4. So in quadrant 1, that's pi over 4. Quadrant 4 is 7 pi over 4. And so those are the solutions. So to solve a non-quadratic trig equation, start by isolating the trig function. Then ask yourself, where are the solutions? That's plural. There's at least 2. Finally, look for the reference angle. Draw a sketch. Keep it simple. Keep it to quadrant 1. And then finally, what are the solutions? Go back to those 2 quadrants from step 2. That's where you're looking for those solutions. And that's how Becker breaks it down.